I want to welcome you to the 2025 Iowa City Book Festival, presented by the Iowa City UNESCO City of Literature. And we'd like to thank our sponsors and our partners who made this event possible: the City of Iowa City, the University of Iowa, the Iowa City Public Library, the Coralville Public Library, Prairie Lights Bookstore, Iowa Public Radio, Think Iowa City, Greater Iowa City Incorporated, and the West Bancorp Foundation. Support is provided also by the National Endowment for the Arts and the Iowa Arts Council, which exists within the Iowa Economic Development Authority. The Iowa City Book Festival events are open to everyone and available at no cost, but they rely on your support. So we do want to encourage you to consider donating to the City of Literature by visiting the iowocitybookfestival.org and clicking support. Now, tonight's event features John Warner, and I've read one of his earlier books, and this one I haven't gotten yet, but I'm going to get his new book because he has some real interesting ideas about AI, especially for those of us who are nervous about how it's developing in our society. John is the author of More Than Words: How to Think About Writing in the Age of AI, and he believes that there are important distinctions to be made between the way humans write and the syntax generation of information by large language models like ChatGPT. This distinction is at the root of what he believes we should value: the fact that human communication comes from our unique intelligence, not reducible to patterns and predictions. In this presentation, John will explore how to navigate the tensions of generative AI, specifically as it's introduced into our schools, workplaces, and lives. There's a need to preserve essential and meaningful experiences related to our deepest human selves. This event is being sponsored by the University of Iowa School of Journalism and Mass Communication. We want to thank them for their sponsorship, and we want to welcome John Warner.
Let's see. Can you hear me? The microphone's working. Excellent. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Thank you. I've had a lovely time here in Iowa City. Denise and I went and saw some jazz last night at Sanctuary Pub. Who in the room has done that before? Okay, well, everybody, that's not enough people. It should be more people. It really was amazing. And it was an opportunity for me to reflect on what I think is meaningful about education. Because it's a program, the faculty in the music school put it on. And they get up and play some stuff, and they're excellent. But then the students get up and join in like a jam session, and they're also excellent. And it's not in a classroom, it's in a bar. And it's probably the most meaningful things, no offense to classrooms, but it's probably the most meaningful stuff that will happen to some of these people while they're here. And I have a long history of teaching college writing. And I've been concerned about how we do that for many years, long before ChatGPT showed up. People weren't paying as much attention to me until ChatGPT showed up. The irony of all this is that ChatGPT has been the best thing to happen to my career ever. Or better turn that on. It allows me to come do events like this. So I want to preview what I'm going to sort of walk us through together tonight. I'm going to briefly talk about my view of artificial intelligence, or generative AI, large language models. There's a number of different theories about this, but I have my unique one that I hope will stick with you. I then want to convince you that only humans can write. I see some students in this room. Some of you have been conscripted to be here. That's okay. I'm familiar with that from my days teaching freshman composition. You may be or have used these things to generate syntax that you've then turned in as though it were writing, but you didn't write. And I want to convince you that those two things are different. And then I want to talk about how I think we need to make space for humanity in a world where this technology exists. We are figuring this out on the fly, for better or worse. And in order to succeed, we need to be aware of our own humanity. And then how do we explore? Given that this technology exists, given that I don't think like OpenAI is going to fold up their tent and say, our bad, this stuff doesn't work. It's going to be here for the foreseeable future, quite possibly in very big ways. So given that it's here, how can we make use of it in ways that does not diminish our humanity, but actually extends our capacities? So how should we think about artificial intelligence? I think we should see it as a tool of automation rather than intelligence. And there's these different narratives about AI, right? Is AI this? Do we recognize where this is from? The Terminator, yes. The superintelligent AI realizes that the greatest threat to itself is humanity, sends a Terminator back in time to kill the leader of the resistance in the future. And then because Arnold became a big star, they had to figure out how to turn him into a good guy. I still don't understand how that happened, but it did. Or is AI this? Emily Bender, who was one of sort of the earliest, most prominent commentators on this technology, likens generative AI to a magic 8-ball. Those of us from our youth used to ask if girls liked us. The magic 8-ball is rigged. There's double the number of negative responses as there are positive ones. So the positive and the neutral are equal to the total number of negatives. So how you phrase the question has a big difference in how the magic 8-ball, or the odds of the magic 8-ball responding. But Emily Bender argues that if you look at the understanding of a large language model, it's no different than a magic 8-ball, which is shocking given that this is a child's toy. But it's correct at least to a degree. This is how I think of ChatGPT. I see ChatGPT as a very friendly, eager, high-tech Labrador. I'll explain how I got there in a second. So just a little bit of review to make sure we're all on the same page. I think over time, when I gave this talk a year ago, this section would have been like 4 or 5 slides. Now it's 1 because we're more familiar with this technology. But when we talk about AI or generative AI, we're talking about large language models, or if they're image generators or video generators, this kind of stuff. It's all the same stuff. It's all operating on the same principles. There's different names for it, but they all basically do the same thing. They have different interfaces. They are trained somewhat differently, but the underlying architecture, the GPT part of it, the transformer, is the same. How many years before ChatGPT showed up, some very smart researchers published a paper in an academic journal saying, we think this will work for training these things. And then a bunch of people got busy doing it, and they were correct. So they're all doing the same thing underneath the hood. Here are things large language models can do. Return sensible syntax to any prompt based on the probabilities of its training. End of list. Now, what you can apply that to is significant and broad. But anytime you query a large language model, this is what's happening. It is fetching syntax. This is why I have the friendly, high-tech Labrador theory of generative AI. It very eagerly goes, look at this thing. It's a language model, tokens. It's just excited. It's going to go bring this stuff back. But it's no smarter than a Labrador retriever when it comes right down to it. It's simply something that's designed to fetch these tokens and bring them back and arrange them on the basis of probability and semantic adjacency, which is kind of amazing if you think about it, that this works. But that is how it's working. Here are the things large language models cannot do: think and reason. Not only can they not do it, they will never do it. It is beyond the capacity of this approach to technology. They do not feel. I did an experiment. I actually published a piece about this experiment in Slate a few months ago. I started verbally abusing ChatGPT every time I used it. I'd be like, hey, dipshit, here's what I need you to do. And it would just do it, right? And I was abusing it because I wanted to remind myself the user interface is designed to simulate a sort of human response to get us to work with it more. But it's an illusion, it's a game, it's a trick. And so we have to remember, can't judge accuracy or truth. And yet one of the most popular things people do with these things is ask if something is true. Now, the syntax it drags back is often correct, but there's no process of weighing of evidence that results in that. It cannot form a world. You can't sort of say like, oh, I see the world in certain ways, or to use a fancy word, develop heuristics, the processes we use to make sense of patterns in the world. With intention. One of the things I like to do when I do these talks is share this quote from Eric Salvaggio from his, an essay he wrote, A Critique of Pure LLM Reason. I printed this out at home office to remind myself of this. Models do not reason in the sense we might expect. Reason amongst humans could be defined as logic, of the mind to think or understand things. The logic of LLMs, and by extension the reasoning of LLMs, is steered through language alone, not language as a marker of thought, but language as an exchange of uncomprehended symbols sorted by likelihoods of adjacency. That's all it is ever doing, it's what we'll ever do. And again, it's amazing that it generates things that we can deem as useful. But the only reason those outputs are useful is because there's a human on the other end receiving them. By themselves, they have no utility. So I think we should see it as automation rather than intelligence. Producing syntax is a byproduct of human writing, but it is not all that human writing is, as I'll share shortly. What large language models do when they produce syntax is nothing like what humans do when we write, as we will again see momentarily. And that generating text through prediction is not the same thing as encountering an intelligence. Only humans write. I'm about to prove it to you in the room. I'm going to say two words, only two, and some of you, if I can catch this, will go somewhere else. I will put you literally in a time machine, at least in your minds, and you will feel like you are there. So everybody's got to sort of be prepared for this. Clear your minds. Be ready for it. It's going to be two words. Here are the words. Here they come, if you're ready. Are you ready? Okay, here they come. Here are the words. Cinnamon rolls. Cinnamon rolls. I'm seeing a nod. Where'd you go? Sunday mornings with Ma. Oh, that's a great. Who else went somewhere? Who? Yeah, where?
The donuts at work this morning.
Oh,
They were cinnamon rolls.
cinnamon roll donuts. Lucky you. You must work at a good place. Who else went somewhere? Yeah.
Deluxe Bakery.
Okay. Good bakery? Specific. Did anybody other than me go here? I don't only go to Cinnabon, I go to a very specific Cinnabon. I go to the Cinnabon that used to be in the corridor between Terminal 1 and Terminal 2 in O'Hare Airport. It has not been there for it, but it was there at a period of time when I was living in Chicago in the late 90s and traveling frequently for work. Sometimes like literal day trips, like I'd get on a flight at 6:30 and I'd go home, be coming back at 10:30. And every time I would walk by that thing, I'd be like, don't get it, don't get it, don't get it, don't get it, I got it. Because of that smell, right? Only humans have that. Large language models, if you type cinnamon rolls into the interface, will say, oh, they are gooey and delicious, but it doesn't know what that means. We know what it means. It doesn't have a memory of mom's kitchen. Interacting with the world that's coded as experience and memory. And unfortunately, again, as I was saying long before ChatGPT showed up, we devalue this particular unique human trait in the kind of writing that happens in school contexts. That was a mistake. When I was young and going through school, at least not till I got to high school. But this is pretty incredible that I could put you in another time and place with 2 words, or a song you haven't heard in a long time comes on shuffle, and you're sent to some specific time and place in your life. This is a uniquely human capacity. We also have the opportunity to build on those experiences and give them meaning. One of the things, I did a little talk at the journalism program yesterday, and I talked about how one of the ways that I can understand what's happening today with the automation of syntax production through large language models was what happened when research was automated in universities with the internet and search, because I'm old enough for that, right? And what I saw in my students was a disempowering, because all of a sudden they had this box on the library homepage they could do all the research in, and I realized, oh, they don't actually know how to research. So I had to change my curriculum. And so when I saw this thing arrive, I'm like, oh, I've seen this play before. That's because I have the capacity for reflection and metacognition. Everyone in this room is unique intelligence. The notion that we give credit and our amazement to generative AI because of its capacity to say something about everything, because it's trained on all of our language, to me, is a significantly lesser achievement than the fact that everybody in this room is a unique intelligence. And so I urge us to remember that as we move on. The act of writing is inextricable from thinking. While you are writing, you are thinking. If you haven't experienced this and you're a student, it's probably because, again, we screwed up how we teach writing. Because writing is thinking, the base unit of writing is not the sentence, it's the idea. So when we made generations of students like, you got to drill on your sentences and then we'll let you write something, we had it backwards. You first have to have something you want to say, and then you can begin to worry about your sentences so we can get that idea down. And the thinking is on 2 dimensions. It is both the expression of an idea, that is, you have this notion in your head you want to capture on the page, but you also, in the process of doing that, the idea changes. It takes a different shape, develops. How many of you have had like a new idea when you were writing, and you're like, oh, where the hell did that come from? That's thinking. That's writing. Writing is also feeling. It's not a purely intellectual exercise. When we write, we re-experience the world, again, because we have that unique capacity. Sometimes it's overt, like you're writing about a memory and you're like, oh, you can get yourself back in that space. But it may even be a more mundane experience. I have this in my book. I like this anecdote, so I use it almost all the time. As an illustration of how writing is feeling. This was during the pandemic. Early on, like April, May, when we were still like, when grocery stores sort of limited how many people could get in, you're all masked up, one-way traffic down the aisles. And I'm doing my shopping, and I see on the grocery store floor there's a Post-it note that's somebody else's grocery list. And so I pick it up. I'm sort of panicked, like, do I need to track this person down and give them their list? They're not going to get it. And I abandoned that notion because I'm like, I don't want to get near any other human beings. But I looked at it, and it was just whatever, regular stuff. And then until I got to the bottom, and I noticed it said at the bottom, cherry Pop-Tarts, all caps, exclamation point, underline, underline. And I chuckled to myself, like, oh, wow, there's some very important cherry Pop-Tarts. And I understood, because at that time we were kind of freaked out. And it's like, find comfort in the things you find comfort in, which for these people was cherry Pop-Tarts. And I just filed that away. And then when I was working on More Than Words, and I was writing a chapter on writing is feeling, and I used some personal stuff around stuff I've written that sort of got me in touch with my own experience of the world. And then I remembered this, and I thought, the grocery list is something that people actually have been trying to automate. And yet, think of the person who wrote cherry Pop-Tarts, all caps, exclamation point, underline, underline, underline. At that moment, they were deeply connected to the people in their household, thinking about their needs, making something as mundane as a grocery list. Writing is an experience. It's an embodied practice. It's a process. One of the things I often have to convince the students that I worked with was that it's not good. It's never going to be good for anybody when it first comes out. My students were often under the impression, like, oh, you learn how to write, and then once you can write, as it's the first time, it's all good. So I started bringing in, like, the first drafts of stuff I had written, and they would mock me. And we would see, like, see, this is how it works. Writing is also a form of engagement, concentration. My hope is everybody has lost track of time while writing at some point. It's more common for reading, but it does happen for writing. And that's problem solving, like, how am I going to say this thing that impacts my audience, that achieves my objective, is a pretty unique challenge relative to what we humans. So to learn to write, I think we need to have writing experiences. And my objection to how we've been teaching writing, again, for a couple of generations now, was we prevented students from having writing experiences by substituting templates, like the 5-paragraph essay. And so when this technology showed up, and within a couple weeks, there's these panicked articles in the Atlantic magazine about how high school English is dead and the college essay is dead. That's not about the power of the technology. That's about what we have done to how we view writing in these school contexts. And so the first thing I wrote back in November, I guess it was early December 2022, as I think about it, was that ChatGPT is not a threat, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to re-examine what we do with words, particularly in schools. All right. Let's move away from writing for a second. Let's talk more directly about artificial intelligence. In order to achieve these goals I have, there's some things that we need to resist, not give into, reject, purge. Can't think of any more synonyms off the top of my head right now. One thing we have to resist is technological determinism. That is, once something shows up, it has this inevitable effect on us under its own steam, that there's nothing we can do to resist it. Now, there are a lot of examples of this. It's not like this never happens. Like the automobile, it's had a deterministic effect on our society. Some would say the phone has had a deterministic effect on our society. But we are not powerless against this stuff. We have a very, very famous example where everybody was predicting something was inevitable based on a technological breakthrough that did not happen and has not happened and probably will never happen. and it's Dolly. Dolly the sheep, the first cloned mammal. When Dolly was cloned, you can go look at like the media around this event and said, what are we going to do when we clone humans, which is going to happen any time now. There are no technological barriers to cloning humans. And the world rose up at this idea and said, yeek. And so passed like laws that said, you can't do this. And so cloning is banned in every country in the world with the exception of North Korea. So we don't really know what they're up to. But I like to use this as a reminder that indeed we don't have to accept things which we collectively find unacceptable. We should resist anthropomorphizing AI, that is, treating it as though it's human. When we say humans read, LLMs say humans communicate, LLMs generate. That's all they do. Now, I slip up as much as anybody and say, oh, it read, I had it read it for me, or I had it summarize, or this kind of stuff. That's fine as long as we recognize when we do that, we are just using a shorthand for the purposes of language, not bringing to life something that's not true. It doesn't read, it doesn't think, it doesn't feel. Because it causes us to lose our senses. This was March. The government knows AI is coming. This was an interview, podcast interview, where I think it was like within 2 years. And one of the impending signs was going to be the release of GPT-5, ChatGPT-5. We're going to be so blown away by this thing, we'd be like, oh, AGI is right around the corner. Oops. That thing showed up and people were like, give me back GPT-4. I don't like this thing. When we say things like we're 2 years away from artificial general intelligence, we lose our capacity to think reasonably about this technology, and so we should resist it. We should resist voluntary de-skilling. All of us, to some degree, or many of us, particularly of a certain age, have been significantly de-skilled by technology. I used to be able to get somewhere with a map and my sense of direction, like drive long distances. Like I also understood the US highway system, right? From like Chicago to California just by like following the numbers. Now I'm almost helpless if I don't have my GPS going. I have been de-skilled. So we know this happens. Now, in the realm of generative AI, what we know is if you use this stuff to do stuff you're supposed to do, your skills atrophy. This last bit were radiologists who were given like an AI companion that they were supposed to use alongside their own work to help find growths, I guess. And then they took it away, and they had them do, and this was like thousands of scans, hundreds of doctors, thousands of scans, so big, big sample size, and found that the doctors became less capable of finding these cancerous growths. The really sort of most disturbing part of it, to my mind, was the doctors themselves weren't aware of this. If you ask them, like, are you as good as ever, they said yes. But because they had aggregated so much data, they could see that their skills had diminished. We have to be conscious of this. Students have to be particularly conscious of it because you may be using this in ways that mean you'll never develop the skill in the first place. You don't know what you're missing. You'll be dependent on this technology in ways that ultimately are not to your favor. We should resist ingesting or supporting AI slop. I feel we're going to have to get militant about this shit. Because it's everywhere. The Chicago Sun-Times published an entire book supplement that one guy had used ChatGPT to write for him and made up a bunch of books. This other example is more recent.
Yes.
Probably saw it in the news. People are using the generator to make videos of Robin Williams doing things, and then they're sending them to his daughter. That's just like it's just cruel. They're like, look how cool this is. Your dad's alive. It's like, what are you talking about? This is like, at that point, I'm not pro-shame, but shaming is useful. Just ask my mother. We should resist affronts to our moral and ethical senses. There's a few things that I've become increasingly militant about, and I will brook no debate on this. No room for difference. Like, you're entitled to your opinion, wrong. One of those are historical chatbots, where we conjure a historical figure and turn them into a chatbot. I now call this digital necromancy. And I find it offensive because these are people who lived, walked the earth, wrote things, spoke things, have their actual words that we can read and think about and interpret. We have people who have written and studied these people who we can read and interpret. Yet we should turn these people into chatbots for some mythical, unproven benefit of quote-unquote engagement, whatever that means, is simply not a good thing. This was from this spring. An Anne Frank chatbot could not be made to condemn the Nazis to some middle school children. Because if you know Anne Frank's, her famous, it's weird to think that Anne Frank had a catchphrase, but it's what she's been reduced to in some quarters. Her famous saying is, after all this happened, I still believe in people. And so the Anne Frank chatbot is like, I was murdered by the Nazis, but they're okay, because I believe in people. Nazis are people too. These are things that are simply lies. Any utterance that comes out of a historical chatbot is a lie, because we have the words of the actual people, and we should insist that those are what we engage with. Often in these public fora, I get somebody who wants to debate about, well, each individual use doesn't energy or use all that much water, and that is absolutely 100% true. There's a study that it's like a single query is like using your microwave for 6 seconds or something like that. But then I look at the intentions of the companies developing this technology. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, says that the limits to AI development is the limits of available energy. They will suck up every last kilowatt for their stuff. I think of places like Iowa. These secret, hidden from public scrutiny, taking your water, raising your electric bills. And this chart from a story from the New York Times shows that when people say, oh, it doesn't use any more than like Netflix, true, for now, because we're about here. But this is where the people developing the technology intend to go. So the idea that this is somehow not a tax on our environment, I think is simply belied by the fact that what the companies themselves tell you they intend to do. Mark Andreessen, a tech investor, basically he said, not Mark Andreessen, Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, said, well, we're not going to hit climate targets anyway. So we got to invest in this stuff because it's going to solve our climate problems. This is magical thinking beneath adult cognition. This is one of the richest people in the world. Copyright concerns are real. I'm pleased to have found out that I'm going to be paid something like $18,000 by Anthropic because they sucked up 6 of my books. I might have to split some of that with the publishers. We'll see. Those are real. These models are trained by people living in developing countries who are exposed to content that would curl your toes or worse, causes PTSD. This all still happens. These are real. Now, different people can draw different lines around these things. These can be debated and discussed, and we all have our different sort of moral compasses. If I held to sort of my beliefs around like the environment and stuff, and the urgency of climate, I wouldn't be here in person because I wouldn't fly in a plane. I'd be only doing things virtually. On the other hand, I like coming and doing these things, so I compromise those values to do that and justify them. But I'm aware of these things. At the very least, we should be aware of these. We should resist self-alienation, where we remove friction in exchange for efficiency, but in doing so, we alter our work in some way that may fundamentally change what we do. So before you know it, your work isn't your work anymore. AI grading. I could have had this on the last slide. Using AI to grade student writing, again, is an abomination. You can't read, you shouldn't use it. End of story. I even go so far as to say, like, even like, oh, I don't have time to read anything, I just use it for feedback and then I grade it. Like, come on. Can't read, don't use it. As soon as we decide, I'm going to rely on this rather than my human cognition, we are alienating ourselves from our work to the point where we now have people writing books. Most of these are self-published authors, but you'll like open the file, like a digital file, be like, you'll see the telltale prompt. You guys have used this stuff. Like the prompt is in the thing. We're generating reams and reams and reams of slop simply because we have something that can generate syntax. Resist human defamiliarization. Ooh, I don't know if I was going to be able to say that. This study is from, oh, look at that, today. One of the negative consequences AI is having on students is that it is hurting their ability to develop meaningful relationships with their teachers. So rather than sort of being a community of learners, we're going to do, I don't think so. We have to resist our burgeoning tech oligarchy. I don't think I'm a conspiracy theorist. I like to think I'm a rational person. But these are the richest people in the world, and they have no great affinity for democracy. And so giving those people dominion over things like our government or our schools feels like a mistake. And we should be aware of these things. Okay, let's get to some happier stuff. What should we renew? How do we make space for ourselves to explore this technology? One thing I think we need to do is to value the experience over the transaction. One of the again, damaging things we've done to school is we've turned it into a purely transactional model. Do the thing, get the grade, get the degree, blah, 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 blah. This image is from the Georgetown University Center on Education and the Workforce, which is funded by philanthropists to the tune of tens of millions of dollars, not billions. And this is their image of what college is for. Let's do a critical interpretation of this together, shall we? College is for, well, boys who show up with sweaters from the 1950s and backpacks and huge coins that they put into the college, and they emerge on the other side in a cap and gown and huge stacks of cash. This is the leading group, a kind of think tank embedded at a major elite university that's trying to determine what people should major in based on that equation. Again, I find this an abomination. Bill Gates gave him $30 million. I took this picture at the School of Journalism and Mass Communication just on my way out after I had lunch with some students today. These are just all of the stuff in this thing that you can do that has nothing to do with this. These are activities. Now, they may lead to the stacks of cash. Probably not, it's journalism. But these are experiences first. And so if we can value experiences, maybe we stand a chance. We need to renew our human practices. Some of this is off just me thinking. But attention seems like something we struggle with. And not just focus, but self-direction. That is, what should I pay attention to? And when should I pay attention to it? And then presence. I added that this afternoon. Because like being present in a moment. Because again, I wasn't spying on any students, but I was like around campus and I was watching people. And I would see like, you know, a group of students working together, and they're talking, but then they're all like looking on their phone, like they're only half present, right? And I can be as guilty of this as anybody. And so we have to be mindful about it. Reading, I think, is something we have to work on. It's not something I struggle with, again, mostly because of my age and the practices that I built up over time. But there's no better way to direct your attention than reading. And then I'm also a fan of engaging in non-algorithmic selection. That is, turning off your Spotify choices, turning off the things that say this is what you should be paying attention to that has nothing to do with your choice. Like Amazon tells you, other people who read this book, the book you were looking at, read these books, you should read those books. This is an outsourcing of our judgment, our discernment. I think we need to figure out how to support things of value. I realize being here in this place, doing this, I'm preaching to the choir. But Nick Clegg, who is a British dude, politician, who worked for Meta for years, he says, we cannot give you money for the stuff we use to train your models because it would kill the industry. So think about the irony underneath this. The Georgetown Center for University in the Workforce says, don't go get a humanities degree. These things that are of infinite value have been trained significantly on stuff produced by people with humanities degrees that are worthless, who shouldn't get paid for the stuff that now has significant value when put under this technology. If paying people for their work kills the AI industry, then it should be killed. I want to illustrate how to renew through a comparison of two dogs. On the left there is my ChatGPT Labrador. On the right there is one of my dogs. His name is Quincy. Quincy is a unique intelligence, or non-intelligence. He's a rescue. Like we found him on Pet Finder, and his blurb, right? They have little blurbs, like the dog says, "This is the dog for you if you never want to pee alone again." Could not have been more correct. Now, a perfectly trained syntax-fetching dog does exactly what you want it to at every single time with total enthusiasm, no rejection, indefatigable, and ultimately pretty boring. Quincy is not this way. Quincy is a unique character. He's got some teeth problems. I don't know if that shows up in the dentition is not great. And because of it, the breath is also quite powerful. But because he wants to get, like, this is like far away from you for Quincy's liking. Quincy attempts things he could never achieve. You see the size of that messed up mouth and you see a tennis ball. No. Not happening. But look at the effort. Look at the effort. I could do that for like 20 minutes straight, and he keeps trying. This is Quincy. That's his favorite thing. Isn't he adorable? Such a little shit. I mean, he is like, drives me crazy, but I love him so much. We have another one, Baxter, who's got his issues too. Be unique, like Quincy. Like, I talk crap about Quincy all the time. I was talking to my wife this afternoon, and she's like, you would not believe what he did. He acts up when one of us is gone. He needs us both at home. When Quincy's gone, we're like, we will remember that little character forever, like we do our other dogs we've had over the course of our lives together. The thing that's true about you people is you have something to contribute to the world as your unique intelligence that's much greater than plugging something into these machines. And I don't know how to convince you of that. I think I convince you of individuals. I don't know how to convince the world that creates structures in which we work and labor and make money and live, that's true. But I think at least the easiest way to start it is by believing it ourselves and trying to live that. So thank you for your attention. I think we have questions. If you enjoyed this talk, I write about these things at my newsletter all the time. John has a microphone there. If you have questions, raise your hand. Question over here. Question over here.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. We need this here right now, especially in the era of politics, we need it. My name is Dana Thoman. I teach here rhetoric department, University of Iowa. And I've also had the privilege of getting my journalism degree here at the University of Iowa and comm studies, double major. So I love this university. I love what it does. So one thing I want to ask you about is this. I've been to a lot of talks recently where writers, especially at the Writers' Workshop, which I adore as well, great thing for our state, are saying, oh, writing should just be so artistic and amazing. You should just be driven to do it. Okay, yeah, sometimes that happens. But also, I believe that writers should also be taught process, a little bit of process, okay? So you kind of denigrated the 5-paragraph essay, and I've been teaching for 20 years, and I started off on the Rosebud Reservation, Teach for America. And those students taught me how to teach writing. And it was during the time of No Child Left Behind. So we had 1 million consultants coming in and out of our classrooms. So I will just say that there are a lot of young teachers in this room, a lot of students. And so my question for you is, do you think the 5-paragraph essay serves a function to a point? If you tell your students that when I started to play violin, I thought I could just fiddle. I picked up the violin. That was not what happened. I was Suzuki trained, so I had to learn all these millions of variations of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And sometimes you need to learn a format before you can vary it. You should be taught to vary it, and that should be something that is celebrated and loved. But can you talk a little bit about process and if you trust that?
Sure.
Thank you.
The short answer to your question, I'm afraid, is no. And not because of the 5-paragraph essay template itself, but because of the practices that the existence of this format and its situation in part of a system that privileges standardization and this sort of stuff, right?
I did teach my students that the 5-paragraph essay is for ACT, so that people
Sure.
who don't know writing can grade your work.
Sure, it's a hack.
Yeah.
It's a shortcut. The problem is it dominates writing instruction. I had lunch with 3 lovely undergraduate students from the journalism program today, and they had spent a huge portion of their middle school through high school periods writing 5-paragraph essays over and over and over again. And so in my book, Why They Can't Write a 5-Paragraph Essay and Other Necessities, I talk about how the 5-paragraph essay is an avatar rather than the problem itself. But the reality is 5-paragraph essays do not exist in the world. They're not a naturally occurring format. The way we teach them teaches students to fill in templated information, which prevents us from thinking, because part of thinking and writing is structure. What is the order of my argument? And there is just a much better way. The other thing, the argument I hear about these stuff, a 5-paragraph essay is like training wheels on a bike. You have to do this so you don't fall down. Well, it just so happens training wheels prevent you from learning how to ride a bike, which we discovered long after I learned. Like, I had training wheels on my bike for like 2 years. Because it's like, who needs to learn how to ride a bike when this thing's going to keep you from tipping over, right? I mean, once I turned 16, I was like, all right. You're going to be driving soon. You should actually know how to know. But I was pretty old because you needn't do it. So kids now learn on like balance bikes, right? Because the key is balance. The key skill for writing is making choices. Choices inside a rhetorical situation that has message, an audience, and a purpose. And we can give students those experiences without a 5-paragraph essay, significantly because, like, when you were in grade school, you should be nowhere near academic writing. Your writing should have nothing to do with academics. You should be doing, like, all kinds of, you should just be writing. Haikus, limericks, creative writing, historical fiction, whatever. But the idea that we should be training you for this thing, it's a system, I think I talked about this at the journalism school. We have a system of what I call indefinite future reward. So a transactional system of indefinite future reward, where everything you do in school is not for now. It's not an experience for the moment. It's going to pay off someday in the future. And I'm here to tell you, because through years of iterative experimentation to move away from the kind of teaching I was doing towards something I thought worked, you can give students writing experiences that are rewarding in the moment, rooted in the rhetorical situation. Using a process is key. It's like you must have a way of tackling these things. It's why, I should have put it up there because it's from one of my books. It's called The Writer's Practice. It's a book of curriculum. Writers need to develop the skills, knowledge, attitudes, and habits of mind of writers. And we can give students experiences that help them develop those things in age-appropriate, contextual ways. And I know it works. It's harder mostly it's harder for the students. It's much easier for me, the teacher, because I can just sit back and be like, nope, not soup yet, got to go back, rather than endlessly grading and that kind of stuff.
Got one over here.
Over here, okay.
Thank you so much. This is really illuminating. I was thinking during what really struck me was when you said AI is a lie. I just finished a book called Lying by Sam Harris, and he said all lies are basically when you lie to someone, you take their rights away. It's like an act of violence, even if it's polite or seemingly compassionate, because it's like you're denying them access to reality. Mm-hmm. So you're taking away their agency, you're taking away their ability to make an informed decision. And I just wonder if that's what's really happening to us, is kind of like a mass violent act of taking away our sense of what is real. And then I also was wondering, because I've taught special ed in war zones in 7 countries and 5 American states for 20 years, and I have never seen behavioral issues like I have seen in 6-year-olds who grew up during COVID on AI.
Sure.
I mean, it is
Zoom school, yeah.
Yeah.
We don't really know the cost of that stuff. And I saw a talk recently by a social scientist who's been studying this, and said that she thinks the students most affected by COVID were people who were in 8th grade and seniors in high school at that time, because we missed these key sort of social transition periods. And it's just, so we have to have a certain amount of compassion for ourselves with these challenges. This stuff showed up out of the blue in November of 2022. And 2 weeks later, we're saying the high school essay doesn't need to exist anymore. I actually am incredibly encouraged by the progress we have collectively made since then, since I've been, the first talk I gave about this subject was mid-December of 2022. I was scheduled to talk about teaching first-year writing, nothing to do with AI. The people who were bringing me in were like, we need you to talk about this because everybody's freaking out about this. Now when I'm invited and I'm going to 10 or 12 different places over October, November, kind of approach. They're approaching it rationally. And some are having more success than others, but we're not flailing. We're not panicking about it.
All right, we've got time for a couple more. We'll go here and then there. Again, thanks for the very, very insightful talk. I'm very concerned about the declination of agency, creative thinking.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone. Creative thinking, critical thinking.
Yeah.
Just creative, and I again, as has been alluded to, I'm sure that the intersection of algorithms and AI and self-curated social media has really brought this all at some sort of mass critical scale. All right. That being said, you did some great job. You did a great job of discussing technological determinism and how it doesn't have to end up this way. My concern is, and you talked at a very high level about some things euphemistically we could do to push back. Okay, but practically on the ground, how do we push back?
Well,
Does that hopefully that makes sense?
Agency, like taking charge of your own agency is key, right? Like, if you want to be present, shut down your phone. That was unintentional, I'm sorry. If you want to be present, like with your friends at dinner, like agree, we're not going to have our phones out, right? If you, I was talking about this with the people over lunch, like one of the problems my wife and I had with like streaming Netflix, this kind of stuff, everybody's had this at some point, I bet. You start looking around, what am I going to watch, what am I going to watch, what am I going to watch? Half an hour later, you're like, we don't have time to watch anything, and you shut it down. So we've started a literal practice of deciding what are we watching, then we turn the thing on. And we watch it. And it was like, do you want to watch another? Yes, let's do it. Rather than this sort of like allowing that algorithmic feed to wash over us. And also, like, I quit Facebook, I quit Twitter, and really I quit them because I just took an inventory of like my mood. Like, is this doing anything for me? And if the answer is no, stop doing it, right? So we do have that agency. At the same time, we need a kind of collective like regulation and that sort of stuff over this, which is not happening and probably not going to happen, at least not anytime soon.
All right, we got one last one here.
Hi, I'm a student at the University of Iowa, and my question is, how do we as students push back against professors who want us to use AI? I've had professors who say it has a use in our class, or that I should learn how to use AI for my future students. And I have a pretty staunch stance on it, but I don't know how to tell them no without risking my grade.
Yeah, this is tricky. I mean, we are still very much figuring this stuff out still, right? And there's a lot of differing opinions of this. Like, I'll go talk at universities, and some of the faculty will be like up in arms with what I'm saying. They're like, this is the future of my industry. And I'm like, okay, fine. My industry is writing. So I know I'm right about this. If you say it's the future of coding or accounting or what have you, then that's okay. But one of the things I would recommend, I don't know what to tell you, like how do you face down your professor over this? But what I would say for those of you who have the power to make these policies at your institutions is you should have like policies of principled refusal of the use of this technology and alternative assignments and these sorts of things. Like, this is just simply something I think that should be true. And if you're going to ask your students to use this stuff in an assignment, it needs to be fully transparent. And further than, you need to know this for your future. That's not transparency. Transparency is, this is just good teaching in general, in my view. Transparency is, here's the experience, here's what I'm hoping you learn from this experience. And if those things are clear to all parties involved, then the use of the technology will be purposeful, or the refusal to use will be informed, right? And we can all get along doing this. But the unfortunate structures of these things is like, we're asking to figure this stuff out on the fly. And different fields will have different attitudes towards it. And, you know, we just got to have the arguments. It's simply, there's no way around it. I am often labeled like a resistor. I think I'm more skeptical. Like, I'm not, I wouldn't go back in time and erase the stuff. Maybe I would. I wouldn't know. It's honestly been really just awesome for my career. But I'm more of a fan of moving forward. Like, this stuff exists. Okay, how do we deal with this? And I think we can do it, but do it by, like, either walling ourselves off. The students, you all know, like, any detector doesn't work. You can always get around the detector. It'll flag non-AI generated stuff as AI generated, which is just horrendous. I'm actually involved in how I got wrapped up in this, I have no idea. TAP is an outside expert for some student who's appealing. This is going through the ringer, and I believe them that they didn't do this. Why would you go through all this fuss, to not get a 0 on, like, kind of a trivial thing? It's their honor has been impinged. So we have to have a little grace to the professors who are using this, but this true of professors also. Like, you guys are adults, you have agency, you should be given that opportunity. I don't know, are we out of time?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, that's too bad.
Please help me thank John Warner.
We don't have books to sell or sign. I won't go into that. No, the publisher just doesn't have any because it's been selling better than expected, which is great, except why didn't they have more faith in me? But you can and should order them at Prairie Lights. More are coming into stock, and I encourage you to get it. And if you want, who cares if the dude who wrote it signed it, quite honestly. But if you do want something like that, you can send it to me and I'll sign it and ship it back to you. Thank you for your time. If you want to have like individual questions, I'm happy to hang out up here for a little while and go forth and conquer.